All right, let's dive into this. Pushpa 2, The Rule. We've got a review here, and, it's the sequel, of course, to Pushpa, The Rise.
Huge hit, that first one.
Oh, yeah. Big shoes to fill, same actor, same director.
Expectations through the roof, I bet.
You said it. And that's what this review is really getting at. What makes a good sequel, right? Is it just about going bigger and louder?
That's the trap, isn't it? You want the spectacle, the audience is demanding it, but you can lose the heart of the story.
Exactly. Like the review mentions, Bahubali 2 or KGF 2, they got a little...
Swept up.
Yeah, swept up. Lost in the ambition. I mean, haven't we all seen that happen?
Oh, tons of times. The sequel comes out, you're so hyped, and then it just falls flat. What about you? Any sequels let you down?
Oh, plenty. But, back to Pushpa 2, this review's digging into whether it does that or if it actually, finds its own footing.
Okay.
One thing they really liked is how the director, Sukumar, he builds tension.
Oh, yeah, he's good at that.
But from really simple stuff, like there's this whole thing about a character who won't apologize.
Oh, I read about that. See, but that's what I think is so clever. It's not just explosions and chases, it's character. What's going on inside? Choices people make. That's what hooks you.
It's like when you're reading and, it's not the plot, it's how the characters feel that grabs you.
Totally.
And speaking of characters, the review, they were raving about Allu Arjun. Pushpa, said he was outstanding. Again.
Makes sense. He was magnetic in the first one.
Oh, for sure. And there are those little things they do, like bringing back some of his lines from the first film and that, beard thing he does.
Yeah, the gesture. See, that could have been cheesy, just pandering. But the review argues it actually strengthens his character. Like, this is Pushpa consistent through both films.
So it's more than just, like, nostalgia. It's actually building on who he is.
Exactly. It deepens it.
Yeah. They also talk about Suravali, right? Pushpa's love interest. Apparently, she gets way more attention in this one.
That's interesting. I wonder if it's the right kind of attention, though. That's the question.
Yeah, because that leads into this whole thing about the woman in distress thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, the review calls that out. Classic trope, especially in action flicks. The woman's basically there to be rescued by the hero, and they're saying, with a guy like Pushpa, who's all rebellious, it just...
doesn't fit.
Yeah, it's like he's supposed to be breaking norms, but then he falls into that old pattern.
And undercuts it.
Right.
Right. What do you think? Does that ruin the whole thing, or...?
It's a valid point. I'd be curious to get your take once you've seen it. But anyway, moving on. They talk about the main conflict, right? Pushpa versus Shekhawat. It's more than just...
a power struggle.
Yeah, like typical bad guy, good guy. The review says it's about their egos, but where they come from.
Like the roots of it are different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Shekhawat, it's all about his position, his authority. But Pushpa, he wants equality, even if he goes about it.
The wrong way.
Maybe. It adds a layer to it, though. Makes their fights more intense, more meaningful.
Not so black and white.
Nope.
Makes you think. And there's this moment they describe, really visual, at the climax, a wedding scene happening at the same time as a funeral procession.
Oh, wow. Intense imagery.
And the review suggests it's not just for show. It's symbolic, right?
Yeah.
Joy and grief all mixed up, like the cycle of life.
Ooh, that's deep. And it's subtle, not hitting you over the head with it. Powerful stuff.
Shows you Sukumar's thinking as a director.
Absolutely. Going beyond the surface. Did you catch any other moments like that, symbolic stuff, when you were watching?
That's a good question. I have to think about that. But before we get too philosophical here, the review did have some issues. Like the pacing, they said there's a part in Japan that kind of drags.
Yeah, I read that. Did you feel that way too?
Kinda. Makes you wonder if they were trying to be flashy instead of actually, adding to the story.
Right. Was it just for the international vibe, or did it actually help us understand Pushpa more?
Exactly. If it didn't, then it's kind of a wasted opportunity.
It is. And that brings us back to that whole sequel thing, right? Trying too hard to be bigger, bolder, but losing the plot.
It's a tough balance to strike. But even with those pacing issues, the review still recommends it. What about you overall? Did you like it?
I did. It's well made. There's tons of energy. That central conflict just sucks you in. And the dialogue, fantastic. There was this one line about nightmares and truth. Something like, what's more nightmarish than the truth?
Oh, wow. That's heavy.
It is, right.
Yeah.
Gets you thinking about the whole good and bad, right and wrong morality thing. It does, doesn't it? But even with all the good stuff, they weren't afraid to point out the flaws. Like we talked about the pacing, the Japan sequence. But they also bring up, and rightfully so, how the female characters are treated.
Oh, right. That brings us back to that whole woman in distress thing, which, for those who don't know, it's basically when the female character is helpless
Mm-hmm.
and needs the male character to come rescue her. You see it all the time, and it can feel, I don't know, yeah, reductive, especially if you got strong women in the story.
Exactly. And it makes you think about Pushpa himself. He's this rebel rejecting all the rules.
But then he falls into that savior role.
Yeah. Should he be the one doing that? Could they have told a different kind of story about the women in his world? More nuanced.
Like maybe he challenges those tropes instead of going along with them. That would have been interesting.
Totally. Missed opportunity, maybe? It's something to think about.
Definitely. It's what makes these deep dives so fun. It's not just like a book report. It's really digging into the ideas,
Yeah.
which, speaking of, we were talking about Srivali before. The review mentions she gets more attention, but they didn't really say what that means for her as a character.
Yeah, true. It would have been good to get more on her arc, how she develops compared to the first film.
Did you notice any big changes in how she's portrayed?
Actually, I did. In the first one, she had this spark, independent. But here, she seems more subdued. Like she needs Pushpa to take care of her more.
So it's almost a step backward for her character.
It kind of feels that way, which is a shame because she could have been so much more complex.
It's like the film itself is struggling with its own identity a bit. On one hand, you've got Pushpa, all defiant, breaking the rules, but then he's doing these predictable hero things.
Right. Are they doing that on purpose, or is it just what people expect? Could they have done something totally different?
That's art for you, I guess. Always leaves room for interpretation. And those are the films that stick with you,
Yeah.
right? The ones that make you debate.
Absolutely. The ones that make you think, challenge your own views. So to our listener out there, I'd say keep digging into this. Go back to those moments in the film. Think about what Pushpa's really doing, why he's doing it, and think about those women, how their stories could have been different.
Yeah. And maybe even check out those other sequels they mentioned, Bahubali 2 and KGF 2. See how they handle it. What tropes do they fall into? What do they miss?
It's all about looking at films with a critical eye, but most importantly, having fun with it.
I like that. And actually, there's one more thing from the review I wanted to hit on. The verdict. They recommend Pushpa 2, even with all the critiques. Did that surprise you?
Not really. I think they did a good job balancing it out. They pointed out the bad stuff, but they also highlighted what's great about it. The craft, those powerful moments. Like we were saying, it definitely makes you think.
Yeah. The pacing might be off in spots, and the women could be handled better, but you can't deny it's entertaining.
For sure. Action-packed, visually stunning, and that conflict at the heart of it all, it just grabs you.
So it sounds like Pushpa 2, even if it's not perfect, is worth checking out, especially if like the first one. What's your final takeaway for our listener as we wrap up this deep dive?
Yeah, I think what we see here, what this review brings up, is that a sequel can be, fun and exciting, but also make you think. Pushpa 2, it's got flaws, but it gets you talking about how stories are told, how characters grow, what society expects, all that. Even in a huge action movie, there can be deeper meaning, more layers.
Absolutely. And for anyone listening, if you're not sure about seeing Pushpa 2, I'd say give it a shot. Go in with an open mind, enjoy all the action and the visuals, but also, think about the choices they made, what works, what doesn't.
Exactly. And remember, it's not over when you walk out of the theater. The best conversations, they happen afterward when you're thinking about the themes, those tropes we talked about, the different points of view.
Couldn't agree more. So if this has piqued your interest, definitely check out Pushpa 2, The Rule. See what you think. And maybe revisit those other sequels, Bahubali 2, KGF 2, see how they handle it. Building on the first film.
It's all about exploring those films, thinking critically, but having fun too.
Well said. That's a wrap for today's deep dive, everyone. Until next time, happy watching.